So recently, there's a gentleman who goes by the name of Deflating Atheism.
You're goddamn right.
Hey guys, I have to apologize. I'm way late with my response to these videos. In fact, I didn't know these videos existed until I did a YouTube search for Deflating Atheism about 2 days ago. So I'm still kind of getting the hang of this whole having a YouTube channel thing, so please bear with me. These videos are a response to my challenge to atheists to describe what atheism supposedly has to do with science in a video that's at least 1 minute long. And the responses I got are, for the most part, pretty even-handed and reasonable, so there's not going to be a whole lot of snark in my video. So, the first video, in fact, I only have one gripe with, so I'm just going to let the whole video play out in its entirety.
It doesn't take a minute to explain that atheism has no connection to science. Lack of belief in anything doesn't require either evidence or the lack thereof. It's a state of mind, not an externally evident fact. Conversely, the practice of science is unaffected by one's beliefs. Many scientists do believe in God, but they don't use that belief in their work. Many theists like to point out that Isaac Newton was a theist, but he did not use that belief in his work. Quoting from Principia, "For whatever is not deduced from the phenomena is to be called an hypothesis, and hypotheses, whether metaphysical or physical, whether of occult qualities or mechanical, have no place in experimental philosophy." While science can disprove many claims of religion, such as whether the heavens and earth were created in 6 days only thousands of years ago, it cannot answer the question of whether a supernatural being exists. While atheism and science are compatible with each other, neither is a requirement for the other.
I basically co-sign everything in that video except for the definition of atheism as being a lack of belief in God. Of course, we can define atheism any way we wish. I just don't happen to think that the lack of belief definition accords with how most atheists use the term. Naturally, I don't think atheism by any definition has anything to do with science, but if we define atheism as being a lack of belief in God, it can't have anything to do with science even in principle. Now, this next video I have a few more qualms with.
Alright, just really fast in order to assist you in your understanding. Hi, my name is dumoktheartist. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Deflating Atheism here. Nice to meet you too.
One of the things that we kind of have to establish here is what science is and what atheism is. Science is the study of the universe and its specific laws, where if something makes a claim, you investigate it, you test it, you go through all sorts of things to verify if it exists or not, or if there is something to it. And if the tests do not line up with the question that's being asked, or if they answer it in a way that, kind of says, you might want to hold off on believing that until something better comes along, that's essentially what science does. It looks for answers, and it basically tests everything until, we find out if something is true or not true, if something is proven or disproven. Now, atheism is simply the premise of the belief that there is no deity. That's it. It's not necessarily something that can be substantially quantified by science.
So far, so good.
However, if we look for the presence of a deity, we tend to find a lot of evidence missing to support his, her, it, their existence. Unless you subscribe to ancient astronaut theory, in which case you have a whole slew of other questions, but I'm not even going to touch that one. The fact of the matter is that a lot of people see the lack of evidence for a deity and go, okay, then perhaps the claim of certain religious groups might need to be set aside for now.
Fair enough, but that's more of a disagreement about the evidence itself rather than the function or necessity of evidence in a worldview. We also have to ask the question, is scientific evidence the only kind of evidence we're willing to consider? The idea that only scientific evidence is valid is a metaphysical position that's not recommended either by the findings or methods of science.
Where if you're going to claim that there's a deity that created the universe, I personally don't have a problem with that. But if you're then going to say that that deity had created an ordered universe, where the deity still interacts with its creation, whether or not, there's miracles, signs, wonders, etc., then we need to be able to see the proof as it exists and be able to test it and have a better handle on it.
Well, now we've hit a few snags. As far as God creating an ordered universe, I think there's ample evidence for the ordering of the universe. The operation of the universe is intelligible to our minds when it really has no right to be unless there was an ordering intelligence behind it. Now, as far as God interacting in the world with miracles and signs and wonders, I think it'll be helpful to appropriate the language of Catholic theology when they talk about God's ordinary providence versus his extraordinary providence. Now, God's ordinary providence is just his sustaining of the world and being through an act of will. So the fact that anything at all persists in being is kind of a miracle in and of itself, and the whole cause and effect we observe in nature is kind of written on the substrate of God's ordinary providence. Now, God's extraordinary providence is his interaction in the world with miracles and signs and wonders. These are, by their very nature, anomalous, and kind of by their very nature, rare. Experimental science deals with reproducible results, so an event that is by its very nature anomalous would not be caught by its net in any case, even assuming you could get the miracle under a microscope, which we wouldn't expect anyway.
Now, I know that for some folks it's actually a little bit difficult to picture, but that's essentially where a lot of us are coming from. If you're going to be making a claim, let's see some evidence. If you're going to claim to be able to heal the sick, let's see you go into a hospital with a video camera and document you laying hands on the sick and them recovering. Makes sense, right? This way we have something that, is testable, we can look at, we can see how it works, and then we can judge for ourselves whether or not the claim is true.
Well, sure, go take that up with Pentecostal faith healers, of which I am not one.
Now, let's continue.
Many of you are going to say that the association of science and atheism is self-evident and goes without saying. But that's really why I wanted to make these videos, is because what we think is self-evident and what we think goes without saying is really where our own little unexamined assumptions lurk. So by you making these videos and by me responding to them, I really hope to draw these unexamined assumptions out to the open.
Now, it would have been helpful if perhaps you had explained what some of these assumptions were. Now, I myself don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that atheism and science are, go hand in hand. Atheism is just the answer to the question, is there a deity? Is there a God? Is there such a thing as a deity? No. You work from there.
Agreed.
Either you prove the deity exists, or you don't. Yes, no question. If you're not sure, you're an agnostic atheist, that's fine. All you're trying to do is verify, is there such a thing as a God? Can you prove that there's such a thing as a God? And can you do it without using the source material for your fan fiction? Can you do it? That's what science asks.
I really wish you hadn't used the pejorative term fan fiction, as it kind of cheapens everything else that came before that. Furthermore, I think you're conflating a larger evidential principle with the scientific method. Of course, I believe there's plenty of evidence for God, but the scientific method definitionally deals with questions of the natural world, so a metaphysical issue, like God's existence, would necessarily fall outside the compass of its investigations.
Anyway, let's finish up this video.
So that is my assignment to you. Make a 1-minute video expressing what you think science has to do with atheism. Link it in the comments below, and I hope to respond. Thank you.
Now, hopefully, dude, I hope that you'll be able to answer my response video. Feel free to. I'm going to link it to your video down below, and I'll link to your channel down below in the hopes of perhaps engaging in some kind of dialogue. Just to kind of clarify for myself, I'm more of an agnostic theist than an actual atheist. And it's we have to look at what is before us and what is in front of us. Is there such an evidence to say that yes, there is a God? Can you provide such evidence without resorting to your fan fiction? Or can you do it in such a way that proves your fan fiction to be true? Anyway, this is Dumok the Artist signing off. Sanchini Falcha, have a nice day.
Wrapping up, I dislike your use of the pejorative term fan fiction, and I do believe that there is good evidence for my beliefs. Who knows, I may be wrong. Overall, I like you less than the guy before you, but one point I will count in your favor is that you define atheism as being an explicit denial of God's existence, unlike the other guy who defined it simply as being a lack of belief in God. So, Sanche Falcho to you too, bro. Well, okay then. I want to thank most everyone who responded to my challenge. I feel I should clarify something here. I am looking for debate, substantive debate. If the name of the game is having hordes of fanatical followers who on your command will descend upon a video and just downvote it into oblivion, I bow out. I can't compete. And if that's the kind of fight you're trying to draw me into, all I can tell you is, in the words of that beautiful, beautiful song, bitch, I don't fuck with you. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Please like, share, and subscribe to Deflating Atheism.